But in just one conversation, he had someone so captivated by the gospel that soon they were activated for sharing of the gospel. But it wouldn't be easy. In Matthew 24 verse 14, Jesus told the disciples, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come." Earlier in the chapter, Jesus said that people will experience wars and will hear reports of wars, but that will not mean the end is here yet. Jesus gave them a list of more signs that will precede the end, like famines and pestilences, which are deadly diseases, and earthquakes. Then Jesus adds, "And these are the beginning of sorrows." It will be the beginning of the end. So what will bring the end? It's the proclamation of the gospel. So what is the gospel and how do we share the gospel? Is it difficult? Is it complicated to share? The word gospel comes from the Greek word evangelion, which means good news or glad tidings. In the context of the ancient Greece, when the kingdom was at war, at the conclusion of the war, a messenger was to deliver the good news, the news of military victory. The Greek word used here can be translated as the gospel, thus good news or glad tidings. So how does this relate to us Christians today? In the context of the Bible, the word gospel specifically refers to the message of salvation through the faith of Jesus Christ. The first 4 books of the New Testament, that's the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are referred to as the Gospels. They recount the life, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus the Messiah. If we can narrow this down to a single point, it is this: Jesus hanging on the cross is the gospel. Jesus of himself said, "And I, if I'm lifted up from the earth, will draw all peoples to myself." The theme of the cross is love, forgiveness, redemption, and eternal life. In John chapter 4, we have an example of someone receiving the good news of the Messiah and sharing that good news with someone else. Well, really, with many other people. Jesus was traveling from Judea to Galilee. In between these 2 regions was Samaria. Samaritans and the Jews didn't like each other. It's more like they hated each other and they avoided each other at any cost. Though the shorter route to Galilee was through Samaria, the most Jews took the longer route through the Jordan Valley to avoid any contact with the Samaritans. Jesus went through Samaria and he stopped in the village of Sychar. Jacob's well was located there. While Jesus was resting by the well, the disciples went into the village to get some food. That is when a Samaritan woman appeared on the scene. Jesus began to engage her in conversation. This was very unusual. Pharisees would avoid any contact with women in the public. They would even close their eyes while passing by a woman. They were referred to as bruised or bleeding Pharisees because they would run into walls and buildings with their eyes closed. Now Jesus was speaking to a woman, a Samaritan woman. Jews believed that Samaritan women were in a perpetual state of uncleanness. Jesus was breaking many societal norms and religious rules here. But in just one conversation, he had someone so captivated by the gospel that soon they were activated for sharing of the gospel. But it wouldn't be easy. This Samaritan woman had to overcome many cultural and religious barriers. He started by asking her for water. So Jesus confronted her past with the living water. In this exchange of ideas, the woman was talking about physical and earthly realities, whereas Jesus spoke about heavenly and transcendent realities. This finally prompted her to say, "I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." In just a moment, she experienced the transformative power of divine connection. When Jesus revealed his identity to her, she went from expectation of the Messiah to having a personal encounter with the Messiah. And that personal encounter with Christ had a profound impact on her. She became an evangelist. She went from being captivated to being activated for the mission of Christ. She had no extensive theological training. She had no short-term course on how to share the gospel. The only thing she had was that one moment with Christ, and that moment was enough. all she could tell the people in the village, "Come see a man." Why would they care? In just a few verses earlier, Jesus helped to uncover her past. He said, "You have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband." The same woman is passionately proclaiming throughout the village, "I met a man." I imagine that she never wanted to talk about man she met before. This time was different. Now she wanted to tell everyone that she met the man, the Messiah. What we need today is a profound encounter with Christ. The gospel invitation is extended to everyone to receive and pass on. Charles Spurgeon, a great English preacher, once said, "Evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread." This is a call to all of us. Apostle John, in his first apostolic letter, wrote, "That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled, concerning the word of life. The life was manifested, and we have seen, and bear witness, and declare to you that eternal life, which was with the Father, and was manifested to us." And that's what the Samaritan woman did. She only shared what she had seen with her eyes and heard with her ears. In the beginning of the video, I shared a verse. Matthew 24 verse 14 reads, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come." It says that the preaching of the gospel will bring an end. But an end of what? It will bring an end of sin and suffering, and of death, and of injustice and oppression, and of despair and depression, and of hatred and prejudice, and of addiction and abuse. Numerous churches, many organizations, including government agencies, many politicians, activists, and businessmen, both men and women, have endeavored to eliminate and navigate the challenges confronting people in the world today. While many strive to minimize and control these issues, there's only one remedy for the sick-filled world. Only one thing that will bring an end to all this madness, and that's the proclamation of the gospel. And that's not just good news, that's great news.